Okay, so just to kick off, I'm in my 20th year of work. I'm not a journalist, but I've written for the Huffington Post and Forbes, Business.com, VentureBeat, Tech Vibes, BetaKit. I've been featured on a number of websites, BBC.com, and another bunch of sites. I do a bunch of research. I now spend my days taking a look and scanning what's happening in the world and taking a look at where we can be going in the future. And this talk is really looking at the future of journalism and really digging down into what really is journalism today. And when I actually sat down and started looking at this talk altogether, I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to start off by talking about the history of journalism. And then after a couple of hours of researching everything from like going all the way back to Egypt, all the way through to Germany in the beginning of sort of newspapers and into the modern world, I realized that that's not really that interesting today. What is really interesting today is to start off with probably the greatest revolution that's happened in the last 25 years, is the internet revolution, okay? So everyone's on the internet, I assume. Everyone's on social media, I assume. But with the internet, I think Marshall McLuhan said it quite well. We shape the tools and therefore our tools shape us. And I think that we're all in this room and we've all been shaped by the internet. I got onto the internet in like 1993. Tim Berners-Lee proposed this in CERN like 25 years ago, I think, pretty much to the day, give or take 2 or 3 days. But really, Marshall McLuhan out of the University of Toronto started talking a lot about information and communications theory. And really, he didn't really know that the internet was coming per se. But now, we've got a tool and a network and information providers and content providers that shape who we are every single day. And I think that this is probably the biggest revolution in terms of journalism in most recent years. But I'm really going to start in 1994. And there's a little-known guy called Josh Harris. Who's heard of Josh Harris? Well, he started a company called Sudo, which was basically YouTube live streaming in 1994, which was quite a challenge. But he did some pretty amazing things and experimented with new ways of communication. And he saw the internet as being something that was incredibly powerful. And there's a movie called We Live in Public that you should all go and watch after this that explores what he did when he put his entire life online, but when he experimented with people and social networks in the real world.
The internet's like this new human experience. At first, everybody's going to like it, but there will be a fundamental change in the human condition. One day, we're all going to wake up and realize that we're just servants. It's captured us.
It was genius because nobody had done it yet.
He was saying this is the way it's going to be. And he was right. I mean, he was right.
He was selling companies for a couple $1 million while we were all a bunch of kids getting paid $10 an hour to try to figure out HTML.
Josh was one of these incredible new idols everybody suddenly wanted to be.
I'm going to ways to take CBS out of business.
He was always trying to advance the inevitable. This is going to happen. Let's try it now.
It is our function as artists to make the spectator see the world our way.
People want 15 minutes of fame every day. So we built a bunker and showed them the future.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama, papa coming for you.
We're going to record Stasi type of intelligence.
The cameras were everywhere. There was cameras set up in the showers and the toilets.
Everything graphic.
They're eating and shitting and having sex in public, and people ate it up.
Keep your electric on me, babe.
This was one of the most extraordinary activities I've ever attended anywhere in the world. Really, the question starts to become, who is behind this, what's going on?
Everything is free except the video that we capture of you. That we own.
Okay, a lot of it rings true today, right? That was a long time ago. That's like 22 years ago. And, you know, Josh Harris, there was a lot of burnout. And Ondi Timmer did this great movie, We Live in Public, and you should absolutely watch that. But this experiment was actually shut down. They had a gun range in there. It was completely out of control. I think it got shut down after about 30 or 40 days. And it was pretty bad. People were having psychosis and really bad situations. And maybe that was a precursor of some of the predicaments that we find ourselves in today as internet users. And then really, moving on from the internet revolution, I don't really talk about much other internet bits and pieces until later on in this discussion. The connection revolution is incredibly important. 2008. Who's got an iPhone? Who's got a smartphone? Everyone's got a smartphone. Who doesn't have a smartphone? Wow, better go and buy a smartphone. To date, 130 million apps have been, 130 billion apps have been downloaded? About $50 billion in revenue. What's interesting is that more people in the world have got access to cellular technology than to running water, clean running water. A third of the people in the world, that's about 2 to 2.5 billion people, have got access to smartphones. This has changed everything. And it's that connection to the internet and the connection to each other, and even through mesh networks when the internet's not available, that's caused a huge revolution. And I just want to share this.
This word mobile is just kicking everything we thought of in terms of behavior as it relates to content, entertainment, music, reading, and news consumption. It's just kicking it in the butt. And 3-4 years ago, I walked into this building, there weren't any tablets. I didn't have a 4-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch, 10-inch screen as a choice that I can't live without that screen. I can't go anywhere in the world without that screen. And it helps me read the New York Times, the FT, see my Bloomberg, Top Wire, Newswire. You gotta love this stuff. Mm-hmm. But what's it gonna do to human behavior? Our generations, our kids' generations? We'll see. I'm pretty optimistic.
Right, and these are journalists, and this is Andy Peck from Bloomberg talking about this, and you got David Carr there as well, and you know, this is a really interesting discussion, and I'm going to share all these slides with you in these discussions because I think it's really important that you read them. But really, you know, newspapers and news agencies aren't shying away from technology. In fact, they're embracing it. So, what about new journalism? Well, I actually think that there's an intersection of three things. I think that there's professionals, pro-ams, and participants. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about each of these with some examples of each. So, professionals, yep, we're here to be journalists. Maybe some will diversify, but ostensibly we're here to be professional journalists. And professional journalists help break news, right? It might be Edward Snowden and breaking that story, world-changing, right? It might be Mossack Fonseca and what happened in Panama, world-changing. It might be Mother Jones going in and spending $350,000 and putting someone undercover in the American prison system and completely revolutionizing how we see what the hell goes on in there. And in fact, like the US government most recently have said that they're actually no longer going to use private prisons, and partly because of investigative journalism like this. What's interesting is that Mother Jones spent $350,000 on this particular piece of investigative journalism, and they only ever earned $5,000 back. They had about 1.2 million hits on their website, and that was how much revenue they got from advertising. It's a big question of who's going to fund good journalism, right? And this is the big challenge in the professional world, especially in investigative journalism. And then, like, even I saw Taylor speak at a VR journalism conference recently, and even start thinking about virtual reality reporting. If you've not used virtual reality, I tell you to go and do it, and go and order a Google Cardboard or something like that, and really get into it and understand that the emotion and the immersion is going to be one of the big future pillars of modern journalism as well. Okay, that's not the whole realm of professional journalism. But for me, I think investigative journalism is probably the pillar that's the most interesting to me. But then we've got pro-ams. What do I mean by pro-ams? Professional amateurs.
In a city built on secrets.
I'm hearing there's corruption in City Hall.
Only a newsroom willing to stop at nothing can uncover the truth.
And it might go all the way to the top.
All the way to the top?
They knew. And I think we could prove that they knew.
I'm just not sure what kind of clicks we're gonna get on that. You know? Anybody else?
I got a thing about a cat that looks like a raccoon. Or it could be a raccoon that looks like a cat. Wait, I'm not sure.
Now we're talking.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's great. Let's figure that out.
Okay, great.
Yeah, maybe an online poll.
It's political corruption in Boston.
We'll come back to that if we have time, but...
I like the rat cat.
Oh, rat cat, that's great.
Rat.
Let's blow the roof off that.
It's the movie critics are hailing as genuinely deflating and depressingly accurate. The Oregonian raves. Ugh, who needs a drink? 4 reporters.
Actually, I'm taking a buyout.
3 reporters.
Technically, I'm not a reporter. I'm the director of social media strategies, but I consider myself an important part of the editorial.
2 reporters.
I'm also leaving. I'm being replaced by whatever the this is.
1 reporter and some kind of burnt orange X chase the story of a lifetime.
How far does this thing...
So, you know, that's actually a pastiche of the movie Spotlight by John Oliver. And I thought it was quite interesting, like how, you know, traditional news agencies and newspapers are changing. And unfortunately, we've still got huge behemoths in the world like BuzzFeed. If you scan this page, you've got puppies and British 2,000 girls went through a bunch of milestones and tweets about perfect skin. And there's a little bit of news about Obama and Putin just here, right? But these guys are muscling into the zone, and these started off as you know, hobby projects that have now turned into multi-million-dollar businesses. And then you've got people that just get hold of technology and just share their own stories and create news around themselves. Does anyone know who this is? Casey Neistat. Who watches Casey Neistat's videos? Well, like Casey Neistat, he records about 10 to 16 minute videos every single day of the week, Monday to Friday typically. He's now got 4.3 million subscribers. He's had over 1 billion views, and he averages 1.5 million views per day on his videos. But why is this really important when we start to think about Pro-Am? Sure, he'll make money from advertising, but there's something interesting that Casey actually brings to the fore.
Actually unnoticed. See, Neistat's revolutionary move was bringing more than a decade of videographic experience to a subgenre that prizes amateur craft. Daily vlogs need a dose or a feeling of amateurism because what makes them valuable is how real they seem. In an age where reality TV was dominated by Jersey Shore and the hills, where scenes were prompted by the suggestions of producers, if not completely scripted.
I don't care about anything else but me and Gianni smushing.
Daily vlogs are the response, a real slice of life with no corporate mediator. And the signature of something that's not corporate is a lack of polish, a product that passes through the hands of only one person before it was delivered to an audience. No audio touch-ups, no color correction, no notes from a distant boardroom. Neistat elevated that amateur spirit to an art. And I say spirit because nothing of what he does is actually amateurish.
When it comes to this vlog, and YouTube in general, I was trying to find opportunities to up my game when it comes to production value.
So it's really interesting. So here's a guy that goes out and buys a $1,000 camera. He probably spends about $600 on a lens. He's got a couple of GoPros and he's got an iPhone, and he sets it all up, and every day he wanders around and he creates stories. And he creates stories ostensibly about his life. But he's got drones as well. You may have seen this video of him snowboarding through New York City, being pulled behind his friend's Jeep. That's had like 16 million views to date, right? Gets away with murder. And then people that don't get away with murder, WikiLeaks. And then you've even got people like Google News Lab that are now giving you all the tools that you need to go ahead and create the stories that you want. So professional journalism skills and tools are actually in the realm of the hands of people that aspire to be journalists. And then I think what becomes incredibly powerful when we start thinking about bystanders and participants, like that third intersectional circle. Because 6 billion people have got access to cellular technology, I actually speculate that we've got 6 billion journalists in the world. That includes all of you before doing this course. It includes me not doing this course. It includes all the kids that have got cell phones and access to the internet. We can see how this came up from the Arab Spring, which was activism, but really it was journalism. We can see it that that major world-shaking news gets broken using cellular technology. This is Sohaib Attar, who lives in Abbottabad, who heard 2 helicopters flying over at 1 a.m. that were landing to capture Osama bin Laden, actually kill Osama bin Laden. And then you had Keith Urban, who broke the news. He was Donald Rumsfeld's chief of staff. He broke the news before anyone else, before any news agency, before even the US government. That was a smart move. But really, this is the world that we're living in. And those 2 people aren't journalists, but they broke probably one of the biggest stories of the past 25 years. And then you've got people that are going out and building huge propaganda pieces that may or may not contain levels of truths, myths, truths, or certainly spun information. So this particular video about Hillary Clinton went viral on the internet, and her campaign couldn't control this. And then you had people, I'm British, the Brexit thing happened, that was fun. But the Financial Times, they wrote an article, and this guy came in and made a comment under a Financial Times article on ft.com, and probably made one of the bravest and most insightful statements about what Brexit was all about. And he talked about how we now live in a post-factual democracy, and it blew everyone away. As journalists, sometimes we actually create new vernacular of how to talk about the world, or politicians do the same. And this is a 25-year-old journalism student, just like many of you in the room. And he was subsequently asked to come back and speak, and subsequently asked to write for ft.com. And now everyone uses post-factual democracy in journalism. It didn't come from journalists, it came from a student that just had his finger on the pulse and a very, very sharp opinion. And then you've got apps like New Zulu. You can download this, you can create news on the fly. It's easier now more than ever to actually share information. Who's on Snapchat here? I came off Snapchat. It eats data. It's ridiculous. But okay, everyone's on Snapchat, right? What's it? Over 10 billion snaps a day? And it's growing? And then memes. Who would have thought that memes would have even had some sort of kind of equity in the journalistic sort of landscape? But even Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, or about Obama, or about any public figure or any particular situation in the world, memes are out there and people create them, and sometimes they just resonate. They're humorous sometimes, they're serious sometimes, they cut to the chase, and sometimes they elevate our thinking. And then Facebook launched Facebook Live, and things like this happen. These 3 young men were in Atlanta. Oh, sorry, Virginia, sorry. Apologies. And they were just on Facebook Live. And they were part of a drive-by shooting, right? They weren't the news, and then they were the news. They were just social media, and now they were the news. And this has gone everywhere. Check out the video, it's very, very heavy. But yeah, it is quite interesting. So this intersection of professionals, pro-ams, and participants have left us in a particular situation. You know, professionals, we can absolutely change the world. Pro-ams can influence the world to help change the world again. And participants report in real time. And sometimes they don't know when that's going to happen. They're just always there holding their phones up, recording, sharing via various different platforms. And what's interesting is professionals we control. And we've got ethics and codes and morals and standards and And we adhere to the Freedom of Information Act and other areas. Pro-ams are fundamentally chaotic and do whatever they want. And really, participants don't really know what they're doing, and it's completely unpredictable because anything could happen, just like that video from Virginia. And really, it's a cycle. It's a very confusing world. And as master's journalism students, you're walking into an incredibly confusing world, and it's confusing for the people that consume news and media. And it's incredibly confusing for people that create it, because how can we really work out how to navigate our way through? It's a mix of social, nonlinear, anarchic, and fact-based journalism. When you've got that melting pot, where do you start and where do you end? What's the truth and what's not the truth? It's a very thin truth sometimes, it's a very deep truth sometimes. So this is the world of journalism today. And I really love this quote from Douglas Rushkoff, and you should go and read everything by Douglas Rushkoff. He's a great author. The pen may be mightier tool than the sword, but not when we're using it to lobotomize ourselves, right? So as journalists, it's really important to realize that you've got a very, very serious job in a very chaotic landscape. And then some people in the world have kind of started to work out how to navigate that. But sometimes they don't always follow the rules. And this is Shane Smith, the founder of Vice.
Well, how I remain authentic is by not being a journalist. I think if you look at the failure of journalism in the modern age, then I don't want to be called a journalist. If you look at Iraq, the invasion of Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein is aiding Al-Qaeda. Everybody with half a brain knew Saddam Hussein wasn't aiding Al-Qaeda. They were a secular regime. They were at odds with each other, yet were co-opted by the government. So if that's journalism, then they can have it. What we do is we go into it, we immerse ourselves into a story. We come at it from a documentary filmmaking standpoint where we get into the story and we press record. 9 times out of 10, when you get to somewhere, the story is different than has been reported by everybody else. So that's what we do. We go in and we report the story that's not being told.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You've had reporters in places like Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan, North Korea, Iran, Iraq. Is there anywhere you haven't been, or any place where, for whatever reason, as you're doing this planning, like it didn't work out?
There's a lot. I mean, we get called, adrenaline junkies or danger journalists or stunt journalists or any name in the book. The fact of the matter is that we're incredibly cautious about what we do.
So Vice, I remember Vice being sold in tattoo shops and all sorts of things years ago as a photojournalism book. It was more punk rock and skateboard than anything else. And now you've got major networks clamoring to be part of them, investing in them, needing to have that connection with the audience out there. But that immersion, the fact that it's not journalism, the fact that it's more documentary, the fact that the story cannot be defined before you get there is actually really important principles to think about. And this is why you're here, to suddenly think about, okay, what does it mean today? What am I going to do when I go out and hit the streets and tell the stories and do the research and really understand that we're only probably going to have 80% of the picture when we actually write the story, and to have that 20% gap that we can fill at the very last minute so that people have got the most relevant information to date. So I always like to give the opinion, an opinion about journalism being more anarchic and social and the such like. But I like to make some predictions as well. These are the things that I think in the next 4 to 5 years are really going to start to impact what you're doing as well. Number 1, deep world-changing investigative journalism will be where professional journalists will flourish. More people will do this. It'll be worse and worse paid going forward, but a lot of people are going to be crowdfunding and getting the money from anywhere to make this happen. 2, journalists will develop deep, connective, episodic stories through community engagement and technology. Imagine if each neighborhood of Vancouver had its own set of journalists, and if they networked and suddenly told stories 365 days a year like Casey Neistat. That'd be pretty cool, huh? 3, predictive journalism and automated articles via big data and algorithmic processing will increase. Alfred talked about Facebook a little earlier. There's more and more systems that generate stories without any human intervention as well. The AI technology is getting stronger and stronger every day. Number 4, immersive video experiences will become primary mediums over and above the written word. Video will be the preeminent media source within 5 years. In fact, I think you'll see that Facebook will have, I'd say most of it will be video within 5 years, definitely. And then number 5, activists will become journalists that will become activists, which kind of asks ourselves some questions around codes and ethics and bias and what do we do? And when we work with people like this, what does that do to our craft of journalism? So that's a little bit about thinking about today, but I always like to think about the future. Now, I'm a big fan of a comic book called Transmetropolitan. Have you ever read Transmetropolitan? Okay, go and buy this book. This is Spider Jerusalem. This is set in the future. He's dragged out of exile because he spent all the money, all the advance that he had on writing a book. He hated journalism. The thing is, he's one of the most impactful journalists in the futuristic world. And he doesn't want to put up with all this shabby crap. He wants to do hard, insightful, investigative journalism. And this set of comic books really shows a craft that I think maybe we don't go as extreme as he does. And I'll let you find out the extremes that he does get up to yourselves. But really, he's got a lot of insight. Journalism is just a gun. It's only got one bullet in it. But if you aim right, that's all you need. Aim it right and you can blow a kneecap off the world. The exposure, the insight, suddenly you're all in a position that in a few years, or maybe sooner rather than later, you might actually write a story that does change the world in Canada, North America, and maybe even wider. Thank you very much.